The scream pierced through the Lagos Marina like a knife through silk. I watched in frozen horror as my husband Kwame dove headfirst into the churning waters of Lagos Lagoon, abandoning our 3 children who were crying and reaching for him on the pier. But he wasn't diving in to save our drowning 5-year-old son Kojo. No, he was swimming desperately toward his ex-girlfriend Ama, who was thrashing in the water 20 meters away. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from. Daddy, our twins Akojua and Kweku screamed, their 8-year-old voices breaking with confusion and terror. Little Kojo was slipping off the wet wooden planks, his small fingers losing their grip as waves crashed against the marina. I lunged forward, grabbing our baby just as he would have fallen into those same dark waters. My name is Efua Asani, and until 30 seconds ago, I thought I was living a blessed life. Married for 10 years to Kwame Mensah, a successful architect in Lagos's booming construction industry, mother to 3 beautiful children, living in our dream home in Ikoyi. We'd come to the marina for what I thought was a family celebration. Kwame had just landed the biggest contract of his career, designing a luxury resort for a prominent Nigerian businessman. But as I clutched Kojo to my chest, watching my husband's powerful strokes cutting through the water toward another woman, I realized our entire marriage had been built on lies as flimsy as the wooden pier beneath my feet. Ama Ose. Even her name left a bitter taste in my mouth. Kwame's university sweetheart, the one he claimed was just a friend, whenever her name came up. The successful fashion designer who had moved back to Lagos from London just 6 months ago. The woman who somehow always needed my husband's help with business advice and catching up over coffee. The woman who was now clinging to him like a drowning rat while my children watched their father choose her over them. Mommy, why isn't Daddy helping us? Akojua whispered, her twin brother Kweku standing stone still beside her, his young mind struggling to process what he was witnessing. I couldn't answer her. My throat felt like I'd swallowed broken glass as I watched Kwame wrap his arms around Ama's waist, his lips pressed against her ear as he whispered something that made her nod frantically. They were too far away for me to hear the words, but close enough for me to see the intimacy in his touch, a tenderness he hadn't shown me in months. Other families at the marina had stopped their weekend activities to stare. Children pointed while parents whispered behind their hands. The weekend crowd of Lagos's elite watched our private destruction unfold like a Nollywood drama, their eyes hungry for gossip that would spread through Victoria Island's social circles by evening. Sir, sir, a marina security guard was shouting, running toward the water with a life preserver. But Kwame ignored him completely, swimming with Ama toward a small speedboat anchored nearby. A boat I'd never seen before. A boat with a man I didn't recognize waiting at the helm. That's when I saw her purse on the pier, expensive Italian leather, the contents spilled across the wooden planks. And among the scattered lipsticks and credit cards was something that made my blood turn to ice. Ultrasound pictures. Recent ones, dated just 2 weeks ago. My hands shook as I picked up the images, Kojo still in my arms, the twins pressed against my sides. The name on the ultrasound was clear, Ama Ose. Gestational age, 12 weeks. 12 weeks. I counted backward in my mind, remembering all those late nights Kwame claimed to be working on his big project. All those weekends he said he had to meet potential clients. All those times I'd called his office, and his secretary said he'd just stepped out. The speedboat's engine roared to life. Through my tears, I watched my husband of 10 years disappear across the lagoon with his pregnant ex-girlfriend, leaving me standing on a pier with 3 confused children and a marriage that had just shattered into a million irreparable pieces. But as I stood there, humiliated in front of half of Lagos's social elite, something else was building inside me alongside the devastation. Something darker and more dangerous than heartbreak. Rage. Because Kwame Mensah had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed I was the same naive woman he'd married 10 years ago. The one who'd given up her own promising career in international business to support his dreams. The one who'd moved to Lagos from our hometown in Accra without complaint. The one who'd turned a blind eye to his friendships with other women for the sake of our family's stability. But as I watched that speedboat become a speck on the horizon, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to be his victim. Not anymore. The marina's general manager, a distinguished Igbo man named Chinedu, approached me cautiously. "Madam, are you all right? Should we call the police?" I looked down at the ultrasound pictures still clutched in my free hand, then back at my 3 children who were depending on me to make sense of this nightmare. "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "But I need to make a phone call." Because there was something Kwame didn't know about that big contract he'd just signed. Something about his new client that was about to turn his perfect betrayal into the biggest mistake of his life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. The phone rang 3 times before the deep, authoritative voice answered. "Efua, this is unexpected. How can I help you?" Chike Okafor, Nigeria's youngest billionaire at 35, real estate mogul, and as of yesterday, Kwame's biggest client. What my cheating husband didn't know was that Chike and I had history. We'd met during my MBA program at London Business School, before I'd made the foolish decision to abandon my career for love. "Chike," I said, my voice barely above a whisper as I walked away from the marina crowd, my children following close behind. "I need to tell you something about the man you just hired." There was a pause. In the background, I could hear the sounds of Lagos traffic and construction. "Are you talking about your husband?" The fact that he knew surprised me. But then again, Chike had always been thorough in his business dealings. "You know, I make it my business to know about the personal lives of people I work with, especially when it involves someone I care about. Where are you right now?" I looked back at the marina, where curious onlookers were still whispering and pointing. The security guard was talking on his radio, probably reporting the incident to his supervisors. "Lagos Marina. Kwame, he left us here. For her. I'm sending a car. Don't go home tonight." "Chike, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm telling you. My driver will be there in 10 minutes. We need to talk." The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone while my children huddled around me like scared birds. Akojua tugged on my dress, the traditional Accra fabric I'd worn specially for what I'd thought would be a celebration. "Mommy, are we going home now?" she asked, her young voice small and uncertain. "Not yet, sweetheart," I managed, kneeling down to their level. "We're going to visit an old friend of Mommy's. Someone who's going to help us." Kweku, always the more serious of the twins, frowned. "Why did Daddy leave us?" The question hit me like a physical blow. How do you explain betrayal to an 8-year-old? How do you tell children that their father chose another woman over their safety, their security, their very existence? "Sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices," I said carefully, pulling all 3 of them close. "But I promise you, no matter what happens, Mommy will never leave you. Never." Kojo, still too young to fully understand but sensing the tension, began to cry. I lifted him up, his small body warm against my chest, and for a moment I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. 10 years of marriage, gone. The father of my children, revealed as a stranger. My life, shattered in the space of a single afternoon. But then I remembered the ultrasound pictures still folded in my pocket, and the rage returned, sharp and clarifying. A sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the marina entrance, the Lagos sun reflecting off its pristine surface. The driver, a tall Hausa man in a crisp uniform, stepped out and approached us respectfully. "Mrs. Mensah? Mr. Okafor sent me to collect you and the children." As we settled into the luxurious leather seats, my phone buzzed with text messages. The first was for my sister Akojua in Accra. "Efua, I just saw something on Instagram about Kwame at the marina. Are you okay?" The second was from my mother-in-law. "Efua dear, some people are saying Kwame caused a scene today. Please call me." But it was the third message that made my blood pressure spike. From Kwame himself. "Efua, I can explain everything. Come home and we'll talk like adults. The children need stability right now." The audacity of that man. The sheer, breathtaking audacity. I turned off my phone without responding and stared out the window as we drove through Lagos's chaotic streets. Vendors hawked everything from newspapers to roasted plantains at traffic lights. Yellow buses weaved between luxury cars like schools of fish. The city pulsed with its usual energy, indifferent to the fact that my world had just collapsed. We drove through Victoria Island, past the gleaming offices and shopping centers that had made Lagos a beacon of African prosperity. Then into Ikoyi, where the homes grew larger and the walls higher, where Nigeria's elite lived behind gates and guards. Chike's estate was exactly what I'd expected: imposing gates, manicured gardens, and a house that looked more like a modern art museum than a home. But what I hadn't expected was Chike himself waiting in the circular driveway, no longer the ambitious student I'd known in London, but every inch the powerful businessman he'd become. He was taller than I remembered, his dark skin flawless, wearing a simple white shirt and dark trousers that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. But his eyes, those intelligent, intense eyes that had first attracted me all those years ago, were exactly the same. "Efua," he said softly as we stepped out of the car. Then more gently, "Hello, little ones. You must be tired." The children pressed closer to me, overwhelmed by the grandeur around them. But Chike's voice was kind, and something in his manner seemed to reassure them. "They have a playground in the back garden," he continued, addressing the twins. "And I think the cook might have some ice cream if your mother says it's okay." For the first time since the marina, Akojua and Kweku smiled tentatively. Even Kojo perked up at the mention of ice cream. "Can we, Mommy?" Akojua asked. "Of course," I said, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. A uniformed woman appeared, as if by magic, to lead the children away, and suddenly I was alone with Chike for the first time in 11 years. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken history. "He chose her over your children's safety," Chike said finally, his voice cold with controlled anger. At a public marina, in front of half of Lagos society. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without breaking down completely. "Efua, I need you to know something. The contract I signed with Kwame yesterday, it was for a 50 million naira resort project. But there are clauses in that contract, moral clauses, behavioral standards, requirements for the kind of man I want representing my business interests." He paused, studying my face. "What happened today isn't just about your marriage anymore. It's about business. My business. And I don't work with men who abandon their children in dangerous situations for other women." My heart began to race. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your husband is about to learn a very expensive lesson about choosing the wrong woman at the wrong time." Chike's smile was sharp as a blade. "But first, we need to make sure you and the children are protected. Because when I'm done with Kwame Mensah, he's going to come looking for someone to blame." Just then, my phone buzzed with another message. This time from an unknown number. "Your husband is with me now. If you want him back, meet us at the Eco Hotel tomorrow at 8 p.m. Come alone." Amma. The pregnant ex-girlfriend was making demands now. Chike saw my face change as I read the message. "What is it?" I handed him the phone and watched his expression darken as he read Amma's ultimatum. "Well," he said, handing the phone back to me, "it seems she wants to play games. Good thing I'm very good at games myself." But before I could ask what he meant, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my home number. Kwame was calling from our house, probably wondering where his family had disappeared to. I looked at Chike, then at the phone, then made a decision that surprised us both. I answered. "Don't forget to like and subscribe for more shocking twists. What do you think Efua should say to her cheating husband? Comment below. Efua, where the hell are you?" Kwame's voice crackled through the phone, angry and demanding. Not apologetic, not remorseful, angry, as if I was the one who had done something wrong. I looked at Chike, who nodded encouragingly, and put the call on speaker. "I'm somewhere safe with our children," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Something you clearly weren't concerned about when you abandoned them at the marina. Don't be dramatic. Amma was drowning. Amma was pregnant. The words exploded out of me before I could stop them. 12 weeks pregnant, Kwame. I found the ultrasound picture she dropped. The silence on the other end of the line stretched. So long I thought he'd hung up. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Quieter. Almost guilty? Efua, it's not what you think. Really? Then explain to me what I should think when my husband of 10 years leaves his drowning 5-year-old son to rescue his pregnant ex-girlfriend. Explain to me what I should think about all those late nights and weekend meetings. Explain to me what I should think about the way you touched her in the water, like she was precious and I was nothing. Chike watched me pace across his marble foyer, his dark eyes unreadable. Through the tall windows, I could see my children playing in his garden, their laughter drifting in through the glass. At least they were safe. At least someone had made sure they were safe. Look, Kwame continued, I can't discuss this over the phone. Come home. We'll sit down like civilized people and work this out. For the children's sake. The children you abandoned today. I didn't abandon anyone. I saved a woman's life. Whose baby is it, Kwame? Another long silence. Then, come home, Efua. Please. The please sounded genuine, almost desperate. But I'd heard that tone before during other arguments, other discoveries of his friendships with other women. The tone that had convinced me to forgive and forget, to prioritize our family's stability over my own dignity. Not this time. I'll come home, I said, and Chike's eyebrows rose in surprise. But not tonight, and not to work things out. I'm coming to pack our things. Efua, don't do anything stupid. Think about what you're throwing away here. Think about our life, our house, our what, Kwame? Our marriage built on lies? Our family that you just proved means nothing to you? Our love that apparently ended 12 weeks ago when you got another woman pregnant? I heard him take a sharp breath. How did you? Never mind. Listen to me carefully. You need to come home now. There are things happening, business things, that you don't understand. My career, our financial security, everything depends on us presenting a united front right now. Chike stepped closer, his expression sharp with interest. Business things, he mouthed silently. What business things? I asked. I can't explain over the phone, but I just landed the biggest contract of my career. We're talking about financial security for life, Efua. For you, for the children. But a certain people think our marriage is unstable. Certain people? My client. He's very traditional, very conservative. If he thinks I can't manage my own household, he might reconsider the contract. Come home. Help me save this deal, and I promise we'll work everything out. I looked at Chike, who was smiling now, but it wasn't a pleasant smile. It was a smile of a predator who'd just spotted wounded prey. Your client, I repeated slowly. You mean Chike Okafor? The silence that followed was deafening. How do you know that name? Kwame's voice was barely a whisper. Because I'm standing in his living room right now. The sound that came through the phone was somewhere between a gasp and a choke. What? You remember London, don't you, Kwame? You remember how we met? I was getting my MBA, networking with other ambitious young Africans who were going to change the continent. You remember Chike Okafor, the Nigerian student who was already talking about building business empires while you were still struggling to pass your architecture exams. Efua, what have you done? I haven't done anything yet. But you might want to check the moral clauses in that 50 million naira contract you signed yesterday. Specifically, the parts about representing Mr. Okafor's business interests with integrity and maintaining standards of personal conduct that reflect positively on his brand. Chike was grinning now, clearly enjoying every word. You're bluffing, Kwame said, but his voice shook. Am I? Would you like to speak to him? I'm sure he'd love to discuss your professional conduct after today's performance at the marina. Efua, please. You're angry, I understand that. But don't destroy our future over one mistake. Think about the children. I am thinking about the children. I'm thinking about how their father chose another woman over their safety. I'm thinking about how they're going to grow up knowing their daddy cared more about his pregnant girlfriend than his own family. I'm thinking about what kind of man I want them to look up to. Through the window, I watched Akojo push Kweku on a swing, while Kojo played in a sandbox bigger than our bedroom back home. They looked happy for the first time all day. Safe. Protected by a man who had known them for less than an hour, but had already done more to ensure their well-being than their own father had. You have until tomorrow night to decide what kind of man you want to be, I continued. Your girlfriend has invited me to meet her at the Eco Hotel at 8 p.m. Something about wanting me back, I believe. I think I'll accept her invitation. Efua, no. Don't meet with her. You don't understand what you're getting involved in. What I'm getting involved in? Kwame, I'm already involved. I've been involved for 10 years. The only difference is that now I know the truth. I hung up before he could respond and immediately turned off the phone. My hands were shaking with adrenaline and something that felt dangerously close to triumph. That, said Chaik, was magnificent. Was it? I feel like I just declared war. You did. And wars can be won or lost, depending on who has better resources and smarter strategies. He paused, studying my face. The question is, do you want to win? Before I could answer, one of his staff members appeared in the doorway. Sir, there's a woman at the gate. She says she's Mrs. Mensa's sister-in-law, and she needs to speak urgently about a family emergency. My heart stopped. Kwame's sister ABA lived in Lagos, and she was one of the few people who might know where to find me. But what could be urgent enough to bring her here? Should I let her in? The staff member asked. I looked at Chaik, who nodded slightly. Yes, but escort her to the small sitting room. And he paused, his expression growing more serious. Have security stay close. Something about this feels off. As we walked toward the sitting room, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap. Because if there was one thing I'd learned about my husband's family over the years, it was that they always protected each other, even when one of them was completely, utterly wrong. And if ABA was here, it meant Kwame was desperate enough to send reinforcements. If you're enjoying this story, hit the subscribe button and share it with someone who loves relationship drama. What do you think Kwame's sister wants? Let me know in the comments. ABA Mensa sat perched on the edge of Chaik's expensive sofa like a bird ready to take flight. At 42, Kwame's older sister had always intimidated me with her razor-sharp business suits and equally sharp tongue. As a senior partner at one of Lagos's most prestigious law firms, she commanded respect in boardrooms across Nigeria. But today, her usually immaculate appearance showed cracks. Her makeup slightly smudged, her designer handbag clutched too tightly in her lap. Efua, she said as I entered the room, not bothering to stand. Her eyes flicked to Chaik with barely concealed annoyance. I see you wasted no time running to your old boyfriends. The insult hit its mark, but I'd expected it. ABA had never liked me, had never thought I was good enough for her precious younger brother. She'd made that clear from our very first meeting 11 years ago. Hello, ABA, I said calmly, taking a seat across from her. Chaik remained standing by the doorway, his presence both protective and intimidating. You said there was a family emergency? There is. You. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to the tone she probably used to intimidate opposing counsel. Do you have any idea what you're doing? What you're about to destroy? I'm not destroying anything. Your brother did that himself when he chose to prioritize his pregnant ex-girlfriend over his own children's safety. ABA's perfectly penciled eyebrows rose. Pregnant? Who told you that? I found the ultrasound pictures. 12 weeks along. For just a moment, ABA's composure slipped. Surprise flickered across her face before she regained control. Those pictures could be anyone's. Could be old. You can't seriously be planning to destroy your marriage over speculation and jealousy. I watched him abandon our 5-year-old son to save another woman. There's no speculation about that. He saved someone's life. Any decent human being would have done the same thing. Any decent human being would have made sure their own children were safe first. Chaik interjected quietly from the doorway. Any decent father would have handed his son to his wife and then gone to help. Instead, he left 3 children in potential danger to play hero for his ex-girlfriend. ABA's gaze shifted to Chaik, and I could see her lawyer's mind working, calculating angles and leverage. Mr. Okafor, isn't it? I should have known. You always did have a weakness for other men's wives. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Chike's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. Careful, counselor, he said softly. You're in my home, speaking to my guests. I suggest you remember that. Your guests. ABA laughed, but it sounded forced. Efua, do you really think this is about kindness? About old friendship? Men like Chike Okafor don't do anything without expecting something in return. What do you think he wants from you? The question hit closer to home than I wanted to admit. Why had Chike been so quick to help? So ready to get involved in my personal crisis? But before I could spiral into doubt, I remembered the sound of my children laughing in his garden. The way he'd spoken gently to them despite being a stranger. The immediate, protective way he'd responded when I called. What I think, I said carefully, is that he's treating my children better than their own father did today. ABA's jaw tightened. Efua, I'm going to be direct with you. Kwame made a mistake today. He panicked when he saw someone drowning, and he acted on instinct. But if you push this, if you involve outsiders in our family business, you'll destroy more than just your marriage. What do you mean? The Okafor contract isn't just about money. It's about Kwame's reputation in this industry. If word gets out that his personal life is unstable, other clients will start questioning his reliability. His entire career could collapse. She paused, letting that sink in. And when his career collapses, what happens to you and the children? Where will you live? How will you pay for their school fees, their health care, their future? It was a good argument. The kind of practical, fear-based reasoning that had kept me trapped in an unhappy marriage for years. The kind of thinking that prioritized financial security over emotional well-being, social status over self-respect. Are you threatening me, ABA? I'm trying to save you from making the biggest mistake of your life. Come home with me right now. Help Kwame fix this situation with his client. Present a united front, and this whole mess can be forgotten. And Amma? The pregnancy? What happens to that situation? ABA waved her hand dismissively. Handle privately. Quietly. Like adults. Handle how? That's not your concern. The casual cruelty of that statement took my breath away. Not my concern. My husband's pregnant mistress was not my concern. You know what, ABA? You're right about one thing. I could go home right now. I could smile and wave and pretend everything is fine. I could help Kwame keep his precious contract and maintain his reputation. ABA began to smile, thinking she'd won. But there's just one problem with your plan, I continued. Mr. Okafor has already heard about today's incident. From me. About an hour ago. The color drained from ABA's face. What did you tell him? Everything. About the marina. About Kwame abandoning our children. About finding the ultrasound pictures. About the years of suspicious behavior I ignored for the sake of family stability. ABA turned to Chike, her lawyer's instincts kicking in. Whatever she told you, you need to consider the source. A bitter wife, angry about her husband's friendship with another woman. Hardly reliable testimony. Oh, but I'm not relying solely on Efua's testimony, Chike said, pulling out his phone. You see, the marina has security cameras. Very high-quality ones, actually, since it's a facility used by Lagos's wealthiest residents. I made a few calls after Efua told me what happened. He touched his screen a few times, then turned it toward us. On the display was a crystal-clear video of the afternoon's events. Kwame diving into the water past our struggling son. Kwame swimming directly to Amma. Kwame helping her into that mysterious speedboat while I stood on the pier with 3 frightened children. The footage is quite compelling, Chike continued conversationally. Especially the part where your brother climbs into the boat with his ex-girlfriend instead of returning to check on his family's welfare. ABA stared at the screen, her lawyer's mind undoubtedly calculating the damage. This doesn't prove anything inappropriate between them, doesn't it? Chike touched the screen again, zooming in on the moment when Kwame's arms wrapped around Amma in the water. The body language seems quite intimate for a simple rescue. And then there's the matter of the boat itself. Another touch of the screen brought up a boat registration. It's registered to one Marcus Osei. Any relation to your brother's friend? The silence stretched unbearably. I could see ABA's sharp mind working furiously, looking for angles, for ways to spin this information. But even she had to see how bad this looked. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want," said Chike, "to have an honest conversation about the kind of business partner your brother is going to be. Because integrity matters in my organization. Character matters. And abandoning one's children to chase after pregnant ex-girlfriends suggests a certain lack of both." My phone, which I turned back on, suddenly started buzzing with notifications. Text after text, call after call. I glanced at the screen and felt my heart stop. They were from news outlets, bloggers, social media accounts I'd never heard of. "Efua," ABA said urgently. "What is it?" I opened the first message and felt the world tilt on its axis. Someone had posted the marina footage online. The video of Kwame abandoning our children was already going viral, shared across Lagos's social media networks, with captions like "Architect abandons kids for side chick" and "Family values in Lagos elite." But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the follow-up video that someone had managed to capture. Footage of Kwame and Amma in a passionate embrace on the speedboat, his hands on her still flat belly, her lips pressed against his ear in what could only be described as lovers' intimacy. Nigeria loves a scandal, especially one involving the wealthy and powerful. And we had just become the hottest gossip in Lagos. "We need to control this narrative," ABA said, her voice sharp with panic. "Efua, you need to come home right now. You need to stand by your husband publicly, or this will destroy everything." But as I watched the view counts climbing on the videos, thousands, then tens of thousands, I realized something that changed everything. I didn't want to control this narrative. I wanted the world to see exactly what kind of man Kwame Mensah really was. "No," I said quietly. "I don't think I will." ABA's phone started ringing. Then Chike's. Then mine again. The story was spreading faster than wildfire in Harmattan season, and everyone wanted a comment, a quote, an exclusive interview. "You have no idea what you've just unleashed," ABA whispered. But I was beginning to think I did. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I was starting to feel something that wasn't just rage or pain. I was starting to feel powerful. That feeling lasted exactly 30 seconds. Because that's when Chike's security chief appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "Sir," he said urgently, "we have a problem. There's a crowd gathering at the gates. Reporters, bloggers, and—" He paused, glancing at me. "And Mrs. Mensah's husband. He's demanding to see his wife and children, and he's brought backup." Through the window, I could see the flashing lights of news vans, the harsh glare of camera lights, and in the middle of it all, Kwame's familiar silhouette pacing back and forth like a caged animal. The war I declared a few hours ago was about to come to my doorstep. Don't miss what happens next. Like and subscribe for more explosive drama. What do you think Kwame is planning? Comment below. The crowd at Chike's gate looked like something out of a movie. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching toward the darkening Lagos sky like mechanical flowers. Reporters thrust microphones at anyone who came close, their camera crews capturing every moment of what was quickly becoming the social media event of the month. And at the center of it all stood my husband, flanked by 3 men I didn't recognize. Even from the safety of Chike's sitting room, I could see the tension in Kwame's shoulders, the desperate energy radiating from his tall frame as he gestured toward the gate. "Who are those men with him?" I asked Chike's security chief. "Private security, ma'am. Expensive kind. The type politicians and oil executives use." ABA cursed under her breath in Twi, then switched to English. "He's lost his mind. This is exactly the wrong approach." "Is it?" Chike moved to the window, his expression thoughtful. "Or is it exactly what we needed?" Before I could ask what he meant, his security chief's radio crackled to life. Sir, they're demanding entry. The husband says he's here to collect his family and he has legal rights. The reporters are eating it up. Through the window, I could see phone cameras recording everything. The viral videos from the marina had already painted Kwame as the villain in this story, but now he was doubling down, creating even more dramatic content for social media to consume. Efua, ABA said urgently, "You need to go out there. If you don't show yourself, it looks like you're hiding, like you're ashamed." "I'm not ashamed," I said firmly. "I didn't do anything wrong." "Then prove it. Go to your husband. Show Nigeria that your family is united." But Chike held up a hand, his attention focused on something happening outside. "Wait. Look." A sleek white Range Rover had just pulled up behind the news vans. The door opened, and out stepped a woman who made my blood freeze in my veins. Ama Osei. Even 8 stories up, her designer pregnancy dress was unmistakable, flowing elegantly over her still small bump. She moved through the crowd of reporters like a queen, her long braids catching the camera lights, her smile radiant and confident. She was beautiful. Even I had to admit that. The kind of effortless, glowing beauty that made other women feel inadequate just by existing. And she was playing this moment perfectly, one hand protectively on her belly, the other accepting help from a man who emerged from a driver's seat. Marcus Osei. Had to be her brother or cousin, given the family resemblance. Tall, well-dressed, with the kind of quiet authority that suggested serious money. "She's making a statement," ABA observed, her lawyer's instincts sharp even in crisis. "Coming here, looking like the perfect expectant mother while you're hidden away. She's controlling the narrative." Through the window, I watched Ama approach Kwame. The cameras captured every moment as she placed her hand on his arm, as he turned to her with an expression of such tender concern that it made my chest ache with betrayal all over again. They looked perfect together, like a power couple from a Nollywood romance, all stunning cheekbones and expensive clothes and camera-ready chemistry. "She's smart," Chike murmured, his tone almost admiring. "Very smart." "What do you mean?" "She's not just here to support your husband. She's here to claim him, publicly, in front of all these cameras." He turned to me, his dark eyes intense. "The question is, are you going to let her?" My phone buzzed with another flood of notifications. Social media was going crazy over Ama's arrival. The comments ranged from supportive, "She's glowing," "Beautiful pregnant queen," to vicious homewrecker trying to steal another woman's husband, to analytical, "The real wife is nowhere to be seen, suspicious." But it was the latest video that made my decision for me. Someone had managed to record audio from the gate, and Ama's clear, melodious voice carried across the courtyard. "I'm here to support the father of my child," she was saying to a reporter's microphone. "Kwame is a good man who made a difficult choice today. When you see someone drowning, you save them. That's what good people do." The reporter, a young woman from one of Lagos's gossip blogs, pressed harder. "But what about his wife and children? Social media is saying he abandoned them." Ama's smile was perfect, sympathetic, but firm. "Family situations are always complicated. I'm sure Mrs. Mensah is going through a difficult time right now, and I have nothing but compassion for her. But children need their fathers, and I hope we can all work together to ensure that both of our children grow up with Kwame's love and support." Both of our children. She just publicly claimed co-parenting rights to a man who was still married to someone else. "That's it," I said, standing up so fast that ABA jumped. "I'm not hiding anymore." "Efua, wait." ABA grabbed my arm. "No." I pulled away from her, feeling a surge of clarity that cut through all the fear and confusion. "She wants to play this game? Fine. Let's play." Chike was grinning now, that sharp predator's smile that I remembered from our university days. "What do you need from me?" "Access to your lawyers. The best ones you have." "Done." "What else?" "A public relations strategy. I want every media outlet in Lagos to know my side of this story." "Also done." "What else?" I looked out at the crowd again, at Kwame and Ama standing together like they were posing for wedding photos, while my children played in another room, safe but confused about why Daddy wasn't coming to say goodnight. "I want to file for divorce. Tonight." And I want it to be the kind of divorce that gets talked about in law schools for the next 20 years. ABA went pale. Efua, you're making decisions in anger. Sleep on it. Think about the consequences. I have thought about the consequences. For 10 years, I've thought about nothing but consequences. What happens if I rock the boat? What happens if I demand too much? What happens if I stop being the perfect, understanding wife who looks the other way when her husband has friendships with other women? I moved toward the door, my mind crystal clear for the first time all day. Well, now I know what happens. He gets another woman pregnant and abandons our children in public. So I'm done managing consequences for everyone else's comfort. Where are you going? Chike asked. To get my children. And then I'm going downstairs to give those reporters the interview of their careers. Efua, no. ABA was on her feet now, panic clear in her voice. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Kwame's new contract. It's not just with Chike's company. There are other investors, other interests involved. Powerful people who don't like public scandals. Something in her tone made me pause. What aren't you telling me? ABA glanced at Chike, then back at me. The resort project. It's not just about tourism. There are government connections, infrastructure deals, political relationships that could be worth hundreds of millions of naira. If this scandal damages those relationships. Are you threatening me? I'm trying to protect you. There are people involved in this project who don't solve problems with lawyers and PR campaigns. They solve them more directly. The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Chike's expression had gone from amused to dangerous, and I realized that this situation was more complicated than I'd understood. Who exactly are these other investors? Chike asked quietly. ABA pressed her lips together, realizing she'd said too much. Answer him, I demanded. I can't. Client confidentiality. I'm not your client. Kwame is. And right now, Kwame's personal choices are about to destroy whatever protection that confidentiality was supposed to provide. Before ABA could respond, Chike's security chief burst into the room without knocking. Sir, we have a situation. The crowd outside is getting aggressive. Someone threw something at your gate. And he hesitated. There's been a development with the boat from this afternoon. What kind of development? Lagos Harbor Police pulled it out of the water an hour ago. Engine failure, they said, but the passengers were long gone. They found something interesting in the cabin, though. He held up a clear evidence bag containing what looked like a small recording device. Someone was recording everything that happened on that boat. Professional-grade equipment, the kind private investigators use. The silence in the room was deafening. I looked at the device, then at ABA's pale face, then at Chike's grim expression. This wasn't just an affair, I whispered. This was a setup. But a setup for what? And by whom? Before anyone could answer, an explosion of car horns and shouting erupted from the street below. Through the window, I could see the crowd surging toward the gate, reporters pushing forward with their cameras, and at the center of it all, Kwame and Amma locked in what looked like an argument. Then I saw the black SUVs pulling up, 3 of them, with tinted windows and government plates. We need to get you and the children out of here, Chike said urgently. Now. But as we turned toward the door, the lights went out. The entire house plunged into darkness, and in that darkness, I heard the sound that made my blood turn to ice. My children screaming from somewhere in the house. Don't forget to like and subscribe. What do you think is happening to Efua's children? Drop your predictions in the comments. Emergency lighting kicked in after what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. The house's backup systems bathed everything in an eerie red glow as Chike barked orders into his radio, and ABA clutched my arm with fingers like talons. Mommy. The scream came again, closer now, and I recognized Akojua's voice pitched high with terror. The children are in the safe room, Chike's security chief reported, his voice crackling through the radio. Standard protocol during any security breach. They're scared but unharmed. My knees nearly buckled with relief. I need to see them. In a moment, Chike said grimly, pressing his phone to his ear. First, we need to understand what we're dealing with. He spoke rapidly in Igbo to whoever was on the other end. His tone urgent and commanding. Through the window, the scene outside had transformed into chaos. The black SUVs had disgorged men in dark suits who were now pushing through the crowd of reporters, their movements coordinated and purposeful. These weren't random troublemakers. They moved like military, like people accustomed to taking control of situations. ABA, I said, grabbing Kwame's sister by the shoulders. Who are these people? What have you and Kwame got involved in? Her face was gray with fear, all her lawyer's composure stripped away. I don't know. I swear I don't know. Kwame just said the contract was big, that it would set our family up for life. He didn't tell me about this. About what? What is this? Before she could answer, Chike ended his call and turned to us with an expression that made my stomach drop. The power outage wasn't random. Someone cut the main lines to this neighborhood. Very professional job. But your backup power is working for now. But whoever did this knows my security systems, knows exactly how long the batteries will last. He paused, studying something on his phone screen. We have maybe 20 minutes before this house goes completely dark. 20 minutes for what? For them to finish whatever they came here to do. A new sound drifted up from the street. Helicopters. The deep thrum of rotors cutting through the Lagos night, growing closer by the second. Those aren't news helicopters, Chike said quietly. The reality of our situation hit me like a physical blow. Whatever Kwame had gotten involved with, it wasn't just about architecture and resort construction. It was something dangerous enough to bring armed men to a billionaire's compound, something that required military-level coordination. I want my children, I said, my voice deadly calm. Right now. Of course. But first, Chike's radio crackled to life. Sir, we have movement at the back perimeter. 3 vehicles, no lights. They're not Lagos police. Sir, the front gate, they're cutting through. Professional torch work. Sir, aerial surveillance confirms helicopter landing preparation in Victoria Island Park. ETA, 3 minutes. The reports came in rapid succession, painting a picture of a coordinated assault on our position. But why? What could possibly be worth this level of resources and risk? Then my phone buzzed with a text message that made everything click into place. Efua, bring the recording device and come to the gate alone. Your husband's life depends on it. You have 10 minutes. M.O. Marcus Osei, Ama's brother or cousin, the man who'd been driving the boat. They want the recording device, I told Chike, showing him the message. His expression darkened further. Which means whatever is on that recording is worth killing for. Killing. The word came out as a whisper. Efua, professional operatives don't conduct operations like this for blackmail material or embarrassing videos. They do it for evidence that could destroy powerful people or expose criminal operations. ABA was pacing now, her expensive heels clicking against the marble floor. This is insane. Kwame's just an architect. He designs buildings. He's not involved in anything criminal. Isn't he? Chike pulled out his tablet and showed us a series of documents. I did some research after signing that contract. Your brother's recent projects aren't just buildings, ABA. They're money laundering operations disguised as luxury developments. The documents showed construction projects across West Africa. Hotels that never opened, office buildings that remained mysteriously empty, residential towers with no actual residents. All funded by shell companies, all designed by Mensa Architecture. The resort project I hired him for? Chike continued. It was a test. I suspected what he was doing, and I wanted proof. But it seems someone else was already investigating. I stared at the evidence, my mind reeling. You mean someone hired Ama to get close to Kwame? To record him? That's my theory. The pregnancy, the dramatic rescue, the public confrontation. It's all theater designed to create a crisis that would force him to make mistakes, to reveal information. Another text message arrived. 9 minutes, Efua. Don't make us come get you. But why me? I asked. What do I have to do with any of this? You're his wife, Chike said simply. In Nigeria, Wives can be held responsible for their husband's business dealings. If Kwame goes down for money laundering, they'll come after your assets too. Your children's future, your family's property, everything could be seized. The helicopters were directly overhead now, the sound so loud that the windows rattled. Outside, the organized chaos had reached a crescendo. The men in suits were systematically clearing the area of reporters, while the remaining crowd pressed against barriers that hadn't been there an hour ago. "Ma'am," Chike's security chief appeared in the doorway. "The children are asking for you." And he hesitated. The safe room's communication system is picking up external signals. Someone's trying to hack into our security network. That decided it. Whatever danger I was in, my children were in worse. And I was not going to let them become collateral damage in their father's criminal enterprise. "I'm going to get my babies," I said, standing up with more determination than I felt. "Then I'm going to end this." "Efua, you can't seriously be thinking of meeting these people," ABA protested. "I can't seriously be thinking of hiding while my children are in danger because of choices their father made." I looked at Chike, whose expression was unreadable in the emergency lighting. "I need you to promise me something." "Name it." "If something happens to me, if I don't come back from whatever this is, take care of my children. Not temporarily. Not until their father sorts out his mess. Permanently. Nothing is going to happen to you. Promise me." "I promise. But I'm not letting you face this alone." Before I could argue, his security chief's radio erupted with urgent chatter. "Sir, the backup generators just went down. We're running on battery power only. Estimated time remaining 7 minutes. Sir, they've breached the front gate. Multiple armed individuals moving toward the main entrance. Sir, the helicopters are landing. I count 12 personnel, military-grade equipment." In the distance, I could hear my children calling for me, their voices echoing through the darkened house. Akojua, Kweku, and little Kojo, frightened and confused, needing their mother to make sense of a world that had suddenly become dangerous and unpredictable. Just like I'd needed someone to make sense of this afternoon, when my husband chose another woman over our family safety. "The recording device," I said, holding out my hand to Chike's security chief. "Give it to me." "Ma'am, I don't think." "Give it to me. Whatever's on that recording, it's about my husband, my marriage, my family. I have a right to know what I'm dealing with." He looked to Chike, who nodded reluctantly. The device felt heavier than it should have as I slipped it into my pocket. Such a small thing to cause so much chaos. But then again, the smallest things often had the biggest consequences. A new sound cut through the helicopter noise. Amplified voices, speaking in crisp, authoritative English. "This is a federal operation. All civilians must evacuate the premises immediately. Mrs. Efua, you are required to surrender yourself for questioning in connection with ongoing financial crimes investigations." Federal operation. They weren't private security or criminal enforcers. They were government agents, which somehow made everything both better and infinitely worse. "Ma'am," Chike said quietly, "federal agents don't conduct operations like this for routine questioning. They have evidence of serious crimes, and they believe you're either a co-conspirator or a key witness." 6 minutes, Efua. Came another text message. "Federal agents or not, your husband is still in our custody. The choice is yours." I looked around the room, at ABA's terrified face, at Chike's grim determination, at the evidence of my husband's criminal activities scattered across expensive furniture. In the background, my children's voices were getting more urgent, more frightened. 10 hours ago, I'd been a housewife whose biggest worry was planning dinner parties and managing school pickups. Now I was apparently at the center of a federal investigation into international money laundering, with my children's safety hanging in the balance, and my husband in the hands of people who communicated through ultimatums and threats. But as I stood there in the emergency lighting, listening to armed agents surrounding the house while my babies cried for their mother, something crystallized inside me. I was done being a victim of other people's choices. "I'm going to get my children," I announced. "Then I'm going to walk out that front door and end this nightmare once and for all." "Efua, that's suicide," ABA whispered. "No," I said, heading for the door. That's motherhood. But as I reached for the door handle, the lights went out completely, plunging us into absolute darkness. And in that darkness, I heard the one sound that changed everything. The distinctive crack of gunshots, coming from somewhere very close to where I'd last heard my children's voices. What happens next? Hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments what you think Efua should do. Are her children in danger? The gunshots echoed through the darkened house like thunder, each crack reverberating off marble floors and expensive walls. But instead of the screams I expected to hear, there was suddenly complete silence from the direction of the children's safe room. That silence was more terrifying than any amount of crying. Akojua, Kweku, Kojo, I screamed, abandoning all caution as I ran through the pitch-black corridors toward where I'd last heard my children's voices. Efua, wait. Chike's voice came from behind me, but I didn't slow down. Nothing mattered now except reaching my babies. Emergency flashlights clicked on around me as Chike's security team mobilized, their beams cutting through the darkness like swords. The house that had seemed so elegant and welcoming a few hours ago now felt like a maze of shadows and potential threats. Safe room is secure, a voice crackled through the radio static. No breaches, no casualties. Children are unharmed, but requesting their mother. The relief hit me so hard I almost collapsed against the nearest wall. They were alive. They were safe. But the gunshots. Sir, shots came from the exterior courtyard. Another voice reported. Warning shots, we think. Designed to create panic and confusion. Working perfectly, Chike muttered grimly as he caught up to me in the hallway. We reached the safe room door just as it was sliding open, revealing my 3 children huddled together on a small sofa, their faces pale in the flashlight beams, but thankfully, blessedly, unhurt. Mommy. Kojo launched himself into my arms while the twins pressed against my sides, all of us clinging together like survivors of a shipwreck. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Did anyone scare you? I ran my hands over their faces, their arms, checking for injuries I couldn't see in the dim light. We're okay, Mommy, Akojua said, though her voice shook. The nice security man told us it was just like a game, like hide and seek. But we heard the loud noises, and we got scared. Where's Daddy? Kweku asked, and the innocence in his voice nearly broke my heart. After everything that had happened today, he still expected his father to come and make everything better. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that Daddy is the reason we're hiding in a billionaire's safe room while armed agents surround the house? Daddy is busy right now. I'm managed. But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Chike knelt down to the children's level, his voice gentle despite the chaos around us. Hey guys, I know this is scary, but my security team is really good at keeping people safe. Like superheroes, okay. The twins nodded solemnly, clinging to any explanation that made sense in their suddenly senseless world. Ma'am, the security chief appeared in the doorway. We have a situation update. The federal agents are requesting direct communication with you. They're saying this can all be resolved peacefully if you cooperate. What about the people who have my husband? The ones who've been sending threats. No sign of them since the shooting started. They may have retreated when the federal operation became active. Or they might be waiting, I thought. Waiting to see how this federal situation played out before making their next move. My phone buzzed with a new message. Change of plans. Federal agents complicate things. Stay where you are for now. We'll be in touch. M.O. I showed the message to Chike, who frowned as he read it. They're backing off, he observed. That suggests they can't afford to tangle with federal authorities. Which means whatever they're involved in is bigger than just blackmail or personal revenge. Sir, another security team member reported via radio. The federal agents are setting up a perimeter. They're not storming the building, but they're not leaving either. Looks like they're preparing for a siege. A siege. I repeated, the word sounding surreal. Standard procedure when they need to question someone but want to minimize public attention, Chike explained. They'll wait us out, control the information flow, and eventually negotiate a surrender that looks voluntary. ABA, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. Efua, you need to understand something. If the federal government is involved at this level, it means they have evidence. Real evidence. Not just suspicions. Evidence of what, exactly? Money laundering, like Chike said. But probably worse. Tax evasion, fraud, maybe even terrorism financing. She paused, her lawyer's mind working through the implications. The kind of charges that carry decades in prison. I looked down at my children, still clinging to me in the emergency lighting, and felt a surge of pure rage. Not just at Kwame for his betrayal, but for his stupidity, for putting our children in this position, for building his career on criminal activities that would inevitably collapse and destroy everyone around him. Ma'am, the security chief said, the federal agents are requesting you come to the front entrance for a conversation. They're guaranteeing safe passage and saying the children can stay here under protection. Don't trust them, ABA said immediately. Federal agents don't guarantee anything unless they're desperate. If they were confident in their case, they'd just arrest you. So what does that mean? It means they need you to flip, to testify against Kwame in exchange for immunity. She looked at me intently. The question is, are you willing to do that? The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Was I willing to testify against my own husband, the father of my children, the man I'd loved for 10 years, despite his flaws and betrayals? This morning, the answer would have been an automatic no. Family loyalty, marriage vows, protecting the children from seeing their father destroyed. All of that would have outweighed any other considerations. But this morning, I hadn't known about the pregnancy. I hadn't watched him abandon our children for another woman. I hadn't discovered evidence of criminal activities that put our entire family at risk. Mommy, Akojua whispered, are we in trouble? No, sweetheart, I said, smoothing her hair. You're not in trouble. You didn't do anything wrong. But I was beginning to realize that I had done something wrong. I'd been willfully blind to my husband's activities for years. I'd accepted his explanations about late nights and mysterious meetings because it was easier than asking hard questions. I'd prioritized family stability over truth, comfort over justice. And now my children were paying the price for my willful ignorance. I want to hear what they have to say, I announced, surprising everyone including myself. Efua, that's, ABA started. That's what? I interrupted. Dangerous? Stupid? Disloyal. I stood up, gently moving the children to sit with Chike. You know what's really dangerous and stupid? Staying married to a criminal. Raising children in a house built on illegal money. Pretending that loyalty to a cheating husband is more important than protecting innocent kids. I looked down at Akojua, Kweku, and Kojo, my beautiful, innocent children who deserved better than a father who abandoned them and a mother who enabled his crimes. I'm going to talk to the federal agents, I said firmly. And I'm going to find out exactly what kind of man I've been married to for 10 years. Ma'am, the security chief interjected, if you're going out there, you should know we intercepted some communications. The federal operation isn't just about your husband. They're investigating a network of architects, contractors, and government officials involved in systematic corruption across multiple countries. How multiple? Ghana, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and Kenya. Billions of dollars in fraudulent construction contracts, kickbacks, and money laundering. Your husband appears to be a key figure in the West African operations. Billions of dollars. Multiple countries. Key figure. The scope of it was staggering. My husband wasn't just a cheating architect. He was apparently an international criminal. There's something else, the security chief continued. The woman Ama Ose? She's not just his ex-girlfriend. She's an undercover financial investigator working for an international anti-corruption task force. The pregnancy, the relationship, the dramatic rescue. It was all part of a long-term operation to get evidence. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Everything I'd seen today, the Marina incident, the passionate embraces, even finding the ultrasound pictures, had been staged, carefully orchestrated to create maximum emotional impact and force Kwame into making mistakes. So she's not really pregnant. Oh, she is. That part's real. But the father. He paused. According to our intelligence, she's been in a relationship with Marcus Osei for 3 years. They're married. The room spun around me as the implication sank in. Amma was married to Marcus. The pregnancy was real, but it wasn't Kwame's child. The entire affair had been an elaborate undercover operation, and I'd been collateral damage. "Mommy," Kweku's worried voice cut through my shock. "You look funny." I knelt down and pulled all 3 children close, breathing in their familiar scent of baby shampoo and innocence. Whatever happened next, whatever I learned about their father, whatever choices I had to make, they had to be my priority. "Listen to me," I said softly. "No matter what happens tonight, no matter what anyone says about Daddy or about our family, I want you to remember that you are good children. You are loved. And none of this is your fault." They nodded solemnly, sensing the weight of the moment, even if they couldn't understand its full implications. I stood up and looked at Chaik, who had been watching this entire exchange with an unreadable expression. "That promise I asked you to make," I said, "about taking care of them if something happens to me, I need you to extend it." "What do you mean?" "If their father goes to prison for these crimes, they're going to need someone who can protect them from the fallout. Someone with resources and influence. Someone who can make sure they grow up knowing they're worth more than their father's mistakes." Chaik nodded slowly. "You have my word." I took a deep breath and turned toward the door. "Tell the federal agents I'll meet with them. But I have conditions." "What conditions?" "I want immunity for my children. Full protection for their identities and futures, regardless of what their father has done. I want guarantees that they won't be used as leverage against me. And I want to know everything, every crime, every lie, every detail of what my marriage has really been." As I walked toward the front of the house, toward whatever waited for me with the federal agents, my phone buzzed one more time. But this message wasn't from Marcus or Amma or any of the mysterious figures who had been manipulating today's events. It was from Kwame. "Efua, please don't do anything stupid. I can explain everything. Our family is worth more than whatever they're offering you. Please remember that you love me. Please remember our vows. Please don't destroy us." I read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. Because I was finally ready to face the truth. Our family had been destroyed long before today. I just hadn't been strong enough to see it. But I was strong enough now. Ready to find out what happens when Efua faces the federal agents? Make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell. What do you think she'll discover about her husband's crimes? The federal agents had set up their command post in what used to be Chaik's elegant front garden. Portable floodlights turned the tropical landscaping into a stark, institutional space where serious people in dark suits moved with military precision around folding tables covered in laptops and communication equipment. Agent Sarah Adebayo was not what I'd expected from a federal investigator. She was perhaps my age, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the sort of calm presence that suggested she'd had many difficult conversations with confused, frightened spouses of suspected criminals. "Mrs. Mensah," she said as I approached, flanked by 2 of Chaik's security guards. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with us. I know this is an overwhelming situation. Is my husband safe?" I asked, cutting straight to what mattered most. Whatever Kwame had done, I didn't want him dead. As far as we know, yes. The individuals who took him from the marina are also under federal surveillance. We believe they're planning to use him as leverage in a larger negotiation. Leverage for what? Agent Adebayo gestured toward a folding chair across from her makeshift desk. "That's part of what we need to discuss. Please sit." I remained standing. "My conditions first." "Of course. Full immunity for your children, protection of their identities, and complete disclosure of our investigation findings. I'm authorized to agree to all of that, provided you cooperate fully with our inquiry." She pulled out a tablet and handed it to me. "This is a summary of what we know about your husband's activities over the past 5 years. I should warn you it's extensive." The tablet felt cold in my hands as I scrolled through page after page of evidence. Bank records showing millions of naira flowing through accounts I'd never heard of. construction contracts for buildings that were never completed or mysteriously abandoned. Shell companies with addresses in countries I'd never visited. And photos. So many photos of Kwame at meetings with men I didn't recognize, in cities across West Africa, always looking confident and successful and utterly comfortable in a world I'd never suspected existed. The Accra Towers project in Ghana, Agent Adebayo said, pointing to one particularly damaging document. $50 million in construction funding, but the building was abandoned after 6 months. The money simply disappeared into a network of offshore accounts. I remembered that project. Kwame had been so excited about it, talking about how it would establish his reputation across West Africa. He'd been traveling to Accra every other week for months, and I'd been proud of his international success. The Lagos Marina resort, the one you hired him to build, I said to Chike, who had joined us at the command post, was a honeypot, Agent Adebayo confirmed. Mr. Okafor has been cooperating with our investigation for over a year. We needed to draw your husband into a situation where he would reveal his methods and contacts. I looked at Chike, feeling a new kind of betrayal. You've been investigating him this whole time? Even when you called me today, when you offered to help, that was all part of your operation. No, Chike said firmly. My cooperation with the investigation began long before I knew you were involved. When you called me this afternoon, when I saw you in pain, that was personal, Efua. That was real. How am I supposed to believe anything anyone says anymore? Agent Adebayo's voice was gentle but firm. Mrs. Mensah, I understand your anger. But right now, we need to focus on the immediate situation. Your husband isn't just involved in financial crimes. He's become a key figure in a network that includes government officials, international contractors, and according to our intelligence, some very dangerous people. She showed me another document, a communication intercept that made my blood freeze. This is from 3 weeks ago. A conversation between your husband and someone we believe to be a representative of organized crime syndicates in Nigeria and Ghana. They're discussing expanding their operations into Kenya and South Africa, using construction projects as fronts for drug trafficking and human trafficking. The words swam on the screen in front of me. Drug trafficking, human trafficking. These weren't just financial crimes anymore. These were activities that destroyed lives, that fed on human misery. That's impossible, I whispered. Kwame would never. He's not that kind of person. Mrs. Mensah, I've been investigating financial crimes for 12 years. I've seen good men make terrible choices when enough money is involved. Your husband started small, a little kickback here, a padded contract there. But these networks have a way of pulling people deeper until they can't get out. Agent Adebayo pulled up another file on her tablet. The pregnancy situation with Ama, Osei, was the final piece we needed. We knew that if we could create enough personal stress, your husband would reach out to his criminal contacts for help cleaning up the mess. And he did. What do you mean? The men who took him from the marina aren't just business associates. They're enforcers for a trafficking ring that uses construction sites to move illegal goods and people across borders. Your husband called them when he realized his affair was going public. I felt sick to my stomach. Every assumption I'd had about this day, about my marriage, about the man I'd shared a bed with for 10 years, was crumbling like a building with a rotten foundation. The recording device we found on the boat, I said, pulling it from my pocket. What's actually on it? Agent Adebayo accepted the device carefully, as if it were made of explosives. We won't know for certain until our technical team analyzes it, but based on our surveillance, we believe it contains detailed conversations about trafficking routes, money laundering procedures, and plans for expanding operations across West Africa. Evidence that could bring down the entire network, Chike added grimly. Which is why, Agent Adebayo continued, the people who have your husband are so desperate to get it back, and why they're using him as leverage to force you to turn it over. My phone buzzed with a new message. Mrs. Mensah, you have 30 minutes to bring the recording device to Victoria Island Park or your husband dies. This is not a negotiation. M.O. I showed the message to Agent Adebayo, who immediately began barking orders into her radio. Around us, the federal operation shifted into high gear as agents coordinated with what sounded like military units across Lagos. "We're not going to let that happen," she assured me. "But I need you to understand, if we move in to rescue your husband, there's a good chance he'll be arrested immediately afterward. The evidence against him is overwhelming." "What kind of prison time are we talking about?" "For money laundering and fraud? 10 to 15 years, possibly more if we can prove the trafficking connections. For the international scope of the operation, he could spend the rest of his life in prison." The rest of his life. My children would grow up visiting their father behind bars, if they chose to visit him at all. They would carry the shame of his crimes for the rest of their lives, no matter how innocent they were. "There is another option," Agent Adebayo said carefully. "What kind of option?" "Your husband could cooperate, testify against the other members of the network, help us dismantle the trafficking operations, provide evidence about government corruption. In exchange for his cooperation, we might be able to negotiate a reduced sentence." "How reduced?" 5 to 7 years, with a possibility of early release for exceptional cooperation. 5 to 7 years. Still a lifetime for my children, but not impossible to survive. "But," she continued, "he would have to admit to everything. Every crime, every lie, every dollar that passed through those illegal channels. And he would have to do it publicly, in court, knowing that it would destroy his reputation and his career permanently." I thought about the man I'd married, proud, ambitious, always concerned about his image and status. The idea of Kwame publicly confessing to criminal activities, of admitting that his success had been built on lies, would be almost worse than prison for him. "Mrs. Mensah," Agent Adebayo said gently, "I need you to know that whether your husband cooperates or not, this investigation is moving forward. We have enough evidence to prosecute him and most of the network. The only question is whether he makes things easier for himself and for your family. What about me? What about my children? If you testify about what you knew and when you knew it, if you help us trace any assets that might need to be seized, you'll have full immunity. The children will be protected. You could start over, build a new life." Start over. The phrase sounded both terrifying and liberating. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The caller ID showed Kwame's number. "Answer it," Agent Adebayo said, quickly connecting recording equipment to my phone. "But don't agree to meet them. We need more time to coordinate a rescue operation." With shaking hands, I accepted the call and put it on speaker. "Efua." Kwame's voice was strained, frightened. "Are you there?" "I'm here." "Are you hurt?" "No, not yet. But these people, Efua, they're not playing games. They want that recording device, and they want it now." "What recording device, Kwame? What's on it that's so important?" There was a pause, and I could hear muffled voices in the background, people giving him instructions. "I can't explain over the phone. Just bring it to the park. Alone. If you involve the police, if you bring anyone with you..." "You'll what?" "You'll hurt the father of my children? The man who abandoned those same children this afternoon to save his pregnant mistress." Another pause, longer this time. When Kwame spoke again, his voice was different, smaller, more desperate. "Efua, I know how this looks. I know what you must think of me. But everything I did for us. For our family. The money, the opportunities, the life we've been able to build." "The life built on crime, you mean? On trafficking and fraud and God knows what else. You don't understand how business works in Africa. Everyone cuts corners. Everyone finds ways around the system. I was just better at it than most people." The casual way he dismissed his crimes, the complete lack of remorse or accountability, crystallized something inside me that had been building all day. "Kwame," I said, my voice steady and clear, "I want you to listen to me very carefully. I am not bringing that recording device to anyone. I am not negotiating with criminals. And I am definitely not risking my life to save a man who chose another woman over his own children's safety. Efua, please. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow morning. I'm taking the children somewhere safe. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure they understand that your choices don't define their worth." The background voices were getting louder now, more agitated. "They're going to kill me," Kwame said, his voice breaking. "Is that what you want? Do you want our children to grow up knowing their mother let their father die?" It was emotional manipulation at its finest, designed to make me feel guilty for his choices and responsible for consequences I hadn't created. 6 months ago, it would have worked. 6 months ago, I would have done anything to protect his life and spare the children from losing their father. But 6 months ago, I hadn't known that their father was a criminal who endangered their future every day he remained in our lives. "Our children," I said quietly, "are going to grow up knowing that their mother was brave enough to choose their safety over a criminal's threats. They're going to grow up knowing that some people are worth saving and some people aren't." I hung up the phone before he could respond. Agent Adebayo was staring at me with something that looked like respect. "That was incredibly brave, Mrs. Mensah." "No," I said, feeling oddly calm for the first time all day. "That was incredibly overdue." But even as I said it, I knew the hard part was just beginning. Because somewhere across Lagos, dangerous people were realizing that their leverage had just disappeared. And desperate people with nothing to lose were often the most dangerous of all. "Agent Adebayo," I said, "what happens now?" Before she could answer, explosions lit up the Lagos skyline in the direction of Victoria Island Park. The sound reached us seconds later, the deep, rumbling boom of something large being destroyed. "Now," she said grimly, reaching for a radio, "we find out what they do when they realize you're not coming." But as emergency sirens began wailing across the city and helicopters roared overhead toward the explosions, I realized something that changed everything. I wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't afraid of what people would think, what consequences might follow, or what price I might have to pay for making the hard choice. I was finally free, and that freedom was worth whatever came next. Like and subscribe if you think Efua made the right choice. What do you think happened at Victoria Island Park? Drop your theories in the comments. The explosions at Victoria Island Park had been a boat, specifically the same speedboat that had carried Kwame and Amma away from the marina 8 hours earlier. By the time federal agents reached the scene, there was nothing left but debris floating in Lagos Lagoon and a small oil slick reflecting the city lights. "No bodies recovered yet," Agent Adebayo reported as she returned from coordinating with the rescue teams. "But there's evidence that multiple people were on board when it exploded." I sat in Chaik's living room, my children finally asleep on the sofa beside me, and tried to process the possibility that Kwame might be dead. That my children might truly be fatherless now, not just abandoned, but orphaned by violence. The strange thing was, I felt nothing. No grief, no guilt, no overwhelming relief. Just a kind of emotional numbness that suggested my heart was protecting itself from one trauma too many. "Mrs. Mensah," Agent Adebayo continued gently, "we have some updates on the investigation that you need to hear." I looked up from where I'd been stroking Akojua's hair as she slept. "Updates." "The recording device you recovered contained more than just evidence of your husband's crimes. It documented a meeting from 2 weeks ago where several government officials discussed using construction projects to facilitate human trafficking operations specifically targeting children." The words hit me like physical blows. Children. They were trafficking children. The scope of this network is larger than we initially realized. We're talking about operations across 6 African countries, involving dozens of government officials, contractors, and criminal organizations. She paused, studying my face. "Your husband wasn't just a participant, Mrs. Mensah. According to the recordings, he was one of the architects, if you'll forgive the expression, of the entire system." "I need air," I managed, standing up carefully so as not to wake the children. Chaik followed me onto his terrace, where Lagos sprawled below us like a galaxy of lights. In the distance, smoke was still rising from Victoria Island Park, and the harbor was filled with police boats and emergency vehicles. "How many children?" I asked quietly. "We don't know yet. The investigation is just beginning. But preliminary evidence suggests hundreds, possibly thousands, over the past 5 years." I gripped the terrace railing, feeling dizzy with the scope of it. My husband, the man I'd shared a bed with, made children with, trusted with our family's future, had been systematically destroying other families for profit. "There's more," Agent Adebayo said, joining us on the terrace. "We intercepted communications from the boat before it exploded. Your husband, he was trying to negotiate his own freedom by offering information about even higher-level participants in the network." "What kind of participants?" "Politicians, cabinet ministers, international businessmen." She paused. "People with the power to make problems disappear permanently." The implication was clear. Kwame's associates had eliminated him not just to recover the recording device, but to prevent him from revealing how deep the corruption went. "So he's definitely dead?" "We're still searching, but..." Agent Adebayo's expression was grave. "The explosion was designed to leave no survivors. And no evidence." I should have felt something: grief, anger, relief, vindication. Instead, I just felt tired. Bone deep. Soul-crushing tired from carrying the weight of a marriage built on lies and crimes I'd never imagined. "What happens to us now?" I asked. "You're free to go wherever you want," Chike said. "But I meant what I said earlier. My offer to help, to provide security and stability for you and the children, that stands regardless of what's happened tonight." "Why?" The question came out sharper than I'd intended. "Why would you want to take on someone else's damaged family? What's in it for you?" Chike was quiet for a long moment, looking out over the city. "Do you remember our last conversation in London? Before you decided to marry Kwame?" I did remember. We'd been at a coffee shop near the business school, and I told him I was leaving to marry someone else. Someone who needed me more, who would give me the stable family life I thought I wanted. "You told me I was making a mistake," I said. "You said Kwame would never appreciate what he had." I was right about that. But I was wrong about something else. He turned to face me. "I told you that you were choosing security over passion, stability over growth. But what you were really choosing was love. The kind of selfless, generous love that puts other people's needs first." And look how that turned out. It turned out exactly as it should have. You raised 3 incredible children. You built a life based on values that matter to you. You loved someone completely, even when he didn't deserve it. Chike paused. "And when the moment came to choose between enabling his crimes and protecting innocent people, you chose correctly. I chose to let him die. You chose to let him face the consequences of his own actions. That's not the same thing." Agent Adebayo cleared her throat diplomatically. "Mrs. Mensah, there are some practical matters we need to discuss. Your husband's assets will be frozen as part of the investigation. The house, the cars, the bank accounts, everything will be subject to seizure." More consequences I hadn't considered. Not only was I suddenly a widow with 3 children, I was also potentially homeless and penniless. "However," she continued, "there may be ways to protect some assets, particularly those that can be proven to come from legitimate sources prior to your husband's involvement in criminal activities." "How much are we talking about?" "Hard to say until the forensic accountants finish their work. But realistically, probably not enough to maintain your current lifestyle." I thought about our house in Ikoyi, with its 5 bedrooms and swimming pool and staff quarters. About the private schools the children attended, the expensive cars, the comfortable life that had all been built on blood money. "Good," I said, surprising both of them. "Good. I don't want anything that came from those activities. I don't want my children sleeping in beds bought with money from child trafficking. I don't want them eating food paid for with fraud proceeds." I looked at both of them. "I want to start completely over, with nothing that connects us to what he did." "That's very admirable," Agent Adebayo said, "but also very impractical. You have 3 children to support, educate, and provide for." "Then I'll get a job. I have an MBA from London Business School. I speak 4 languages. I'm not helpless." "You haven't worked in over 10 years. "Then it's time to start again." I felt a strange surge of energy, of possibility. Maybe it's time to remember who I was before I became Kwame's wife. Maybe it's time to show my children that women can be strong and independent and successful without needing to depend on criminal husbands. Chike was smiling now, the same admiring expression I remembered from our university days. There's the Efua I remember, the one who was going to change the business world. I was naive then. You were hopeful. There's a difference. He paused. And my offer still stands. Not as charity, not as a handout, but as an investment in someone I believe in. Before I could respond, Agent Adebayo's radio crackled to life with urgent chatter. She listened intently, her expression growing more serious with each transmission. What is it? I asked. They found something in the boat wreckage. Not bodies, but... She hesitated. Documents. Waterproofed and hidden in a compartment that survived the explosion. What kind of documents? Lists. Names, locations, financial records. Agent Adebayo looked directly at me. Mrs. Mensah, it appears your husband may have been keeping insurance records. Evidence against everyone he was working with, stored where he could access it if he ever needed leverage. The implications hit me immediately. If Kwame had documented the criminal network's activities, if he'd kept records of who was involved and what they'd done, he was planning to betray them, I realized. All along, he was collecting evidence he could use to protect himself if things went bad. Which explains why they killed him, Chike added grimly. They couldn't risk him surviving to testify. Agent Adebayo nodded. But now we have those records, and they're going to be crucial in prosecuting the entire network. She paused. The problem is, everyone involved knows we have them, which means they're going to be very interested in eliminating anyone who might have additional knowledge about their operations. You mean me? I mean all of you. You, the children, anyone who was close to your husband. She looked around the terrace, as if checking for potential threats. These people have already demonstrated they're willing to use extreme violence. They're not going to stop now. The temporary safety I'd felt just moments ago evaporated. My children were still in danger, not because of what they knew, but because of what their father had known. Because of records he'd kept and evidence he'd gathered and insurance policies he'd maintained against the very people who'd ultimately killed him. How long? I asked. How long before this investigation is complete and the network is dismantled? Months, possibly years. This level of international corruption takes time to unravel properly. Months or years of looking over our shoulders. Months or years of wondering if every stranger was a potential threat. Months or years of my children growing up in fear because of their father's crimes. There is another option, Chike said quietly. What kind of option? You could disappear. New identities, new country, new life. I have resources, connections. It could be arranged. The idea was both appealing and terrifying. Start completely over, not just financially but personally. Become someone entirely new. Raise my children somewhere safe. Build a life that had no connection to the nightmare of the past 10 years. What about justice? What about making sure these criminals face consequences for what they've done? The investigation will proceed with or without you, Agent Adebayo said. Your testimony would be helpful, but it's not essential. We have the documents, the recordings, the financial evidence. We can build cases against the network members without putting you and the children at continued risk. I looked through the glass doors at my sleeping children, so innocent and peaceful despite everything that had happened. They deserved safety. They deserved the chance to grow up without fear, without the constant shadow of their father's crimes hanging over them. But they also deserved justice. They deserved to live in a world where people who trafficked children faced consequences, where corruption was exposed and punished, where their father's victims could find some measure of peace. I need to think about it, I said finally. But even as I said it, I knew what I was going to choose. Because I'd learned something important today about the difference between protecting your family and enabling evil. And I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life running from the truth. My phone buzzed with a final message, this one from an unknown number. Your husband kept more secrets than you know. Check his study at your house. Under the floorboards, behind his desk. You have 24 hours before we burn it all down. A friend. A friend. In the last 24 hours, I'd learned not to trust anonymous messages or mysterious benefactors. But I'd also learned that sometimes the most important truths came from the most unexpected sources. Agent Adebayo, I said, showing her the message. I think we need to make one more stop before we decide anything. Because if Kwame had been keeping secrets even from his criminal associates, if there were more records and more evidence hidden in our family home, then my choice between safety and justice might not be as clear-cut as I thought. And my children deserve to know the complete truth about their father, no matter how painful it might be. You won't believe what happens next. Hit subscribe and let me know in the comments. Should Efua risk everything to uncover more evidence? The house I'd called home for 8 years looked different at 3 in the morning. Federal agents had secured the perimeter. But inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it 12 hours ago. Breakfast dishes still in the sink, the children's toys scattered in the living room, Kwame's coffee cup sitting on his desk, as if he might return at any moment to finish it. But Kwame would never return to finish anything. And as I stood in the doorway of his study, I realized how little I'd actually known about the man I'd shared this space with for so long. Agent Adebayo and her technical team were already at work, having located the loose floorboards behind Kwame's desk with remarkable efficiency. What they pulled up from the hidden compartment changed everything I thought I understood about my marriage and my husband's motivations. Documents. Hundreds of them, meticulously organized in waterproof containers. But these weren't just business records or evidence of criminal activities. They were insurance policies. Literal life insurance for our family. Mrs. Mensah, Agent Adebayo said softly, "You need to see this." The first folder contained documents showing that Kwame had been feeding information to international law enforcement agencies for over 2 years. Not as a willing cooperator, but as someone trying to extract himself and his family from a situation that had spiraled far beyond his control. He was trying to get out, I whispered, reading through reports he'd filed with Interpol, with the Nigerian Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, with anti-corruption task forces across West Africa. More than that, Agent Adebayo said, showing me another set of documents. He'd been documenting everything specifically to protect you and the children. Look at this. It was a letter addressed to me, dated just 2 weeks ago. Efua, if you're reading this, it means something has happened to me, and the authorities have finally moved on the network I've been trapped in for years. I know you think I chose this life, chose the money and the lies over our family's well-being. But the truth is more complicated than that. I made one bad choice 5 years ago, agreed to inflate some construction costs to help a government official hide kickback payments. I thought it was a one-time favor, the kind of corner cutting that everyone does in business. But these people don't let you make just one bad choice. Once you're in forever. And the only way out is prison or death. I've been working with international investigators for 2 years, trying to gather enough evidence to bring down the entire network while keeping our family safe. The evidence hidden in this house represents everything I know about trafficking operations, money laundering schemes, and corruption that goes all the way to the highest levels of government in multiple countries. I know about Ama's investigation. I've known for months that she was an undercover agent, that the pregnancy is fake, that the relationship was designed to create exactly the kind of crisis we face today. I let it happen because her investigation was the missing piece investigators needed to move against the network. But I also knew that when they moved, I would likely not survive. These people eliminate loose ends, and I've been a loose end for too long. The money in the Swiss account details in the red folder, is clean money, saved from legitimate projects before I got involved with criminals. It's enough to ensure you and the children can start over somewhere safe. The children's trust funds are untouchable. I made sure of that. I'm sorry, Efua. I'm sorry for the lies, for the danger I put our family in, for the man I became when I thought I was protecting us. I love you and the children more than my own life. Please make sure they know that their father's last acts were attempts to save them, even if everything else I did was wrong. The woman who will deliver this letter to you, if something happens to me, is Agent Sarah Adebayo. She's been my contact with the federal investigation. Trust her. Trust Chike. He's been helping the investigation specifically to protect you. Start over. Be happy. Show our children that people can change, that mistakes don't define you, that love sometimes means making hard choices that look like betrayal, but are actually protection. I love you, Kwame. I read the letter 3 times before the words fully sank in. Everything I believed about today, about my marriage, about my husband's motivations was wrong. The affair with Amma, the public humiliation, the dangerous criminal associates. It had all been part of an elaborate plan to bring down a trafficking network while providing evidence that would ensure his family's safety. The Marina incident, I said slowly. He wasn't choosing Amma over our children. He was playing his role in an operation designed to create public evidence of the affair. Exactly. The drama, the public nature of it, the social media coverage, it was all designed to establish a clear narrative that would explain his cooperation with law enforcement. Agent Adebayo showed me more documents, communications with prosecutors, detailed plans for witness protection, evidence of assets he'd hidden specifically to provide for his family after his likely death. He knew they would kill him. He knew it was probable. These networks don't leave witnesses, especially witnesses who've been documenting their activities for years. She paused. But he also knew that his death would trigger the release of all this evidence, and that his cooperation would ensure federal protection for you and the children. I sat down in Kwame's desk chair, surrounded by the evidence of his double life. Not the life of a selfish criminal choosing money over family, but the life of a man trapped by one mistake and spending years trying to protect the people he loved from the consequences of that mistake. The children, I said suddenly. Do they need to know all of this? That's your decision, Agent Adebayo said gently. But someday, when they're older, they might want to understand that their father's final actions were heroic, even if his earlier choices were flawed. Heroic. It was a word I never thought I'd associate with Kwame again. But as I looked through the evidence he'd gathered, the risks he'd taken, the careful planning he'd done to ensure our safety even at the cost of his own life, I began to understand the man I'd married in a completely new way. There's one more thing, Agent Adebayo said, handing me a small device. This is a panic button, connected directly to Federal Protective Services. If you ever feel threatened, if anyone approaches you or the children inappropriately, if you need immediate help for any reason, press this and response teams will be activated immediately. For how long? Permanently, Mrs. Mensah. Your husband's cooperation and sacrifice have earned your family lifetime protection if you need it. I looked at the device, then at the evidence scattered across the desk, then back at Agent Adebayo. What happens to the investigation now? With this evidence, we can dismantle the entire network. Arrest warrants are being issued across 6 countries as we speak. By the end of the week, most of the major players will be in custody. She smiled grimly. Your husband's final gift to the world is going to save thousands of children and shut down one of the most sophisticated criminal operations in African history. Thousands of children. The scope of it was overwhelming, but also somehow healing. Kwame's mistakes had contributed to terrible crimes, but his final actions would prevent even more terrible crimes from happening. Mrs. Mensah, Chaik said, joining us in the study. The children are awake. They're asking for you. I found them in the living room, still groggy from sleep, but alert enough to sense that something important was happening. Akojua and Kweku sat close together on the sofa, while little Kojo climbed into my lap, his arms tight around my neck. Mommy, Akojua said, are we going home now? Home. I looked around the house that had been our home for so many years, filled with memories both beautiful and painful. This place where their father had lived and worked and ultimately died trying to protect them. We're going to have a new home, I said carefully. Somewhere safe and beautiful where we can start fresh. What about Daddy? Kweku asked. When is he coming home? The question I'd been dreading. How do you tell children that their father is dead? How do you explain that he died doing something brave, even though he'd done things that were wrong? Daddy had to go away, I said, the words feeling inadequate but honest. He was trying to help stop some very bad people from hurting other children, and he can't come home anymore. The silence that followed was heartbreaking. I watched understanding dawn in their young faces, watched grief and confusion, and a dozen other emotions play across their features. "Is he dead?" Akojua asked, her voice small. "Yes, sweetheart. He is." Kojo burst into tears, and the twins followed. I held all three of them while they cried for their father, for the family they'd thought they had, for the simple childhood that had ended so abruptly. But gradually, as their sobs quieted, I realized something had changed in the way I felt about Kwame. The anger was still there, the sense of betrayal, the grief for everything we'd lost. But underneath it was something new. Understanding. Maybe even forgiveness. Was Daddy a good person or a bad person? Kweku asked eventually. It was the question that had been haunting me all day. The question that had made me so angry and confused and hurt. But now, surrounded by evidence of his final sacrifice, I finally had an answer. Daddy was a person, I said carefully. Just a person like all of us. He made some very bad choices that hurt people, and he spent the last part of his life trying to fix those mistakes and protect our family. Like when I break something and then try to clean it up? Akojua asked. Something like that, yes. It wasn't the complete truth. They were too young for the complete truth. But it was an honest foundation we could build on as they grew older and could understand more complex concepts of justice and redemption. Mrs. Mensah, Agent Adebayo said diplomatically, we should discuss your plans. With the evidence your husband provided, this investigation will move quickly, but there may still be some dangerous people who don't know the network has been compromised. What are you recommending? Relocation. New identities. A fresh start somewhere safe until all the major arrests have been completed. I looked at my children, exhausted and grieving, but still beautiful, still innocent, still deserving of the best life I could give them. Then I looked at Chaik, who had stood by us through this impossible day, who was still offering help and protection, and a chance at something better. Actually, I said, I have a different idea. Agent Adebayo raised her eyebrows. What kind of idea? I want to testify. I want to go public with this story, to help make sure these criminals face justice, and that other families don't go through what we've been through. I paused, feeling more certain with every word. But I also want to use Kwame's story to help other women recognize the signs of financial crime in their households, to know when they're living on dirty money, to understand that they have choices. That would be very dangerous, Mrs. Mensah. Living in fear would be more dangerous. Running and hiding would be more dangerous. I stood up, my children still close around me. I want my children to grow up knowing that their parents, both their parents, ultimately chose to do the right thing, even when it was hard. Chaik was smiling again, that proud, admiring expression that made me remember who I used to be before I became someone else's wife. There's just one condition, I continued, looking directly at him. Name it. I want to do this as an equal partner, not as someone you're rescuing. I have skills, experience, and now I have a story that could help other people. I want to work with you to build something meaningful, not just accept charity. What did you have in mind? A foundation. An organization that helps families affected by financial crime, that provides resources for economic domestic violence survivors, that works with law enforcement to identify and prosecute corruption. I paused, the idea crystallizing as I spoke. Something that turns our tragedy into other people's hope. The sun was beginning to rise over Lagos, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange that promised a new day, a new beginning, a chance to build something better from the ashes of everything we lost. So, I said, looking at my children, at Chaik, at Agent Adebayo, and the evidence of my husband's final sacrifice scattered across our former life, when we start? Because I was finally ready to stop being a victim of other people's choices and start being the author of my own story. And that story was just beginning. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of our new apartment in Accra, watching my children play in the garden below. They were laughing again, truly laughing, as they chased each other around the mango tree that had become their favorite climbing spot. The Kwame Mensah Foundation, named not to honor my late husband, but to ensure his story served as a warning to others, had helped over 200 families affected by financial crimes in its first 6 months of operation. Women who discovered their comfortable lives were built on dirty money. Children who'd lost fathers to criminal enterprises. families torn apart by economic domestic violence and corruption. Chaik and I worked as equal partners, building something meaningful from our shared understanding of betrayal and redemption. Our relationship remained professional and respectful, built on mutual goals rather than romance. We both understood that healing from trauma took time, and that the best partnerships were built on solid foundations rather than desperate need. The criminal network that had trapped Kwame had been systematically dismantled. 43 arrests across 6 countries. Hundreds of millions of dollars in assets seized. Most importantly, 3 trafficking operations shut down permanently, with over 400 children rescued and returned to their families. Agent Adebayo had kept her promise about protection. We lived safely, but not in hiding, contributing to ongoing prosecutions when needed, but free to build our new lives without constant fear. My children were thriving. They attended good schools, had friends, played sports, and were slowly learning to trust that their world was stable again. They asked about their father sometimes, and I gave them honest answers appropriate to their ages. Yes, he had made bad choices. Yes, he had tried to fix those mistakes. Yes, he had loved them more than his own life. Most importantly, they were learning that people are complex, that mistakes don't define you permanently, and that courage sometimes looks like starting over when everything you thought you knew turns out to be wrong. I had learned something too, that love without respect is not really love at all. That security built on lies is no security at all. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your children is to show them that you're strong enough to walk away from what doesn't serve them, even when it's difficult. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Mrs. Mensah, my name is Grace Aching from Nairobi. I just read about your foundation online. I think my husband might be involved in similar activities to what yours was doing. I don't know what to do or who to trust. Can you help me? I smiled as I typed back, Grace, you've taken the hardest step by reaching out. Yes, we can help you. You're not alone, and you're braver than you know. Call our hotline tomorrow morning, and we'll walk through this together. Another woman, another family, another chance to turn tragedy into hope. The sun was setting over Accra, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. In a few hours, I would tuck my children into bed, read them stories, and kiss them good night in the safety of our new home. Tomorrow, I would wake up and continue building something meaningful from the ashes of what we'd lost. I was no longer the woman who had stood on that marina pier 12 hours that felt like 12 lifetimes ago, watching her husband choose another woman over her children's safety. I was stronger now, wiser, more aware of my own worth and capabilities. I was finally truly free. And freedom, it turned out, was worth every painful step it had taken to achieve it. Thank you for joining Efua's journey from betrayal to empowerment. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to choose courage over comfort. Remember, you are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and worthy of a love that doesn't require you to lose yourself. What did you think of Efua's transformation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know where you're watching from. Don't forget to hit the notification bell for more powerful stories of resilience and redemption. Until next time, remember, sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of a better one.